Hello everyone, and welcome to the last class for the week. We have earlier discussed some tools and platforms that can be used to facilitate teaching and learning. In this video, I'll walk you through the strategic roles of multimedia in teaching learning process. We will look at multimedia elements like text, audio, video, radio, television, and video conferencing tools. These multimedia resources are strategic components of the digital classroom environment, and understanding their capabilities will allow you to effectively utilize them to engage learners. So, let's go to class to examine these learning resources. Alright, we are going to look at the roles of multimedia in teaching and learning now. This is quite important for you as you need the capabilities of multimedia to engage your learners in the instructional process. The space occupied by multimedia in instructional process becomes more crucial in blended learning setting because you need to effectively interact with your student in face-to-face and online modes. So it becomes quite relevant and important when we talk about blended learning. There's no way you will implement blended learning without multimedia resources. So media become strategic tools to ensure that learners are engaged in instructional content, even without teachers' physical presence. You need the power of all this multimedia here to engage your learners, even without your presence. Within the instructional setting, multimedia is simply a combination of diverse media elements to facilitate teaching learning process. These media elements include text, the audio, the video, television, and radio. All these are the elements, and a combination of all this is what we call multimedia. Now let's take these elements one after the other. Let's quickly look at text. Text remains a critical component of teaching learning process, regardless of the proliferation of new technologies in teaching and learning. Because many people think because we now have modern tools and equipment now in teaching learning process, text might not be useful again. No, text still remains a critical component of teaching learning process. Texts in printed and digital formats still play critical roles in formal education, training, especially in open and distance learning. In fact, many fully online courses still make extensive use of text-based learning management systems and online asynchronous discussion forums. Now, there are pedagogical relevance of text in teaching learning process. We talk about the pedagogical relevance because the essence of using technology or any multimedia is to facilitate learning. The pedagogy in terms of the content and the capabilities of the media to engage learners, that is what makes it relevant. Text can come in many formats, including printed textbooks, the digital textbooks I showed you the other time in the last class, messages, text messages, novels, magazines, and some other things like this. These are all text and can be used to facilitate learning. So text is particularly good at handling abstraction and generalization. So especially when you need to cover a large part of the curriculum at a time, the best way to tackle that kind of challenge is to use text. Give your student text. And one major thing is that text is flexible to be integrated with pictures, graphics, and links. In the last class, I showed you a digital textbook. And that digital textbook is embedded with pictures, with graphics, and the links. So the text has that kind of flexibility to accommodate other critical multimedia elements. And that is what is making it quite useful and still relevant in the teaching learning process, even up to now. Now let's quickly look at audio. This is another critical multimedia element for teaching and learning. Audio-based instruction includes radio broadcasts, interactive radio instruction, podcasts. You can just record its audio on your phone and send to your students. That's a learning resource for them. Okay, interactive radio instruction. You see this young chap here. This is what we call the interactive radio instruction. It's a kind of radio instruction that guides students, okay, on how to go about studying a particular concept in the text. So this guy listens to the instruction from the radio and follows through in the text. So we call this one interactive radio instruction.
Now, these resources give voice to the content that is presented in print format. So the print format is useful, but you can still give voice to the print format by introducing audio as well. The implication is that audio-based instruction allows learners to listen to the voice of their tutor and interact with them as well. Now let's look at the pedagogical relevance of radio also. Even with the rapid technological advancement, radio still remains an effective medium of instructional delivery. Why? Because radio is the most accessible to both teachers and students all over the world, and the most affordable in terms of the cost of production, distribution, and use. Radio is quite affordable and therefore will be within the reach of most uh, developing countries and underdeveloped countries of the world. Lastly, it is quite appropriate for a wide range of teaching and learning purposes. Next, we look at podcast. Under audio instruction, we are still looking at audio instruction. So we look at podcast. Essentially, a podcast is an audio transcription of information that can be downloaded and played anywhere and anytime. Podcast is usually short and can easily be downloaded even without high-speed internet service. That's one of the major advantages of podcast. As a teacher, you need to be able to record a short audio message that explains a particular concept. Then, after recording, you upload the content to a podcast hosting service. Okay, so you can do this by using a free software like Audacity. Audacity is a free audio recording and audio editing software. Your students from different geographical regions can go to the platform and download the content. The next multimedia element is instructional video. Now, instructional video engages learners in instructional content and makes learning connected to real-life situations. Okay, when you are teaching abstract concepts, you can utilize instructional video to make that learning, to make that content real, so that your students will be able to see the visual display of the content and we understand the concept better. So it is a much richer medium than either text or audio, because in addition to its ability to offer text and sound, it can also display moving pictures. Now, depending on the learning outcomes that you have set for that particular content, instructional video allows you to demonstrate a particular instructional content, and students will be able to watch the video at their own pace. Instructional video is also appropriate for blended learning and flipped classroom, as students can watch on their mobile phones as well. So, for blended learning, when students are not within the face-to-face classroom instruction, they can watch the content, they can watch instructional videos on their mobile phones, on their iPad, or their computers. So it's appropriate for flipped and blended learning instruction. Now, instructional television is also part of instructional video, and as we know, television can also be used to deliver instruction to a diverse range of students. The same thing we have for radio. Television can also penetrate to a large, diverse range of students in different parts of the country. So instructional television is a video-based instruction that combines the powers of sound, text, and visual to engage different categories of learners. So you can leverage the capabilities of the instructional video and instructional television to engage your learners. So as a resourceful teacher, as an efficient teacher, you should be able to think about how you can use these multimedia elements, the audio, the text, the instructional video, the television, to engage your learners in instructional content, because it makes learning meaningful to them. And unless you are able to combine all these multimedia resources in your teaching learning process or your instructional delivery process, it will be difficult for you to engage your learners, especially these 21st century learners who live in media saturated environments. Thank you. See you next time.